Keith Hudson's project for robbery analysis of Lowell, Massachusetts, 2010. According to the 2010 Census Bureau, Lowell, Massachusetts had a population of about 107,000. It's located about 30 miles north-northwest of Boston, with two rivers on its side, which is Merrimack and Concord. Formerly a powerful U.S. Textile production company, not a company, but city, Lowell began to decline during the Great Depression. The city's long slump came to a halt, however, and the late Senator Paul Tsongas superheated the launch of the Lowell Plan in the early 80s. The city's plan provides for a partnership between public and private sectors to encourage and guide business development in the city. The city's ultimate goals, though, were to strike a balance between manufacturing and knowledge-based industries, to create an attractive downtown, and encourages the use of public spaces to civic, cultural, and recreational activities. All right, this following analysis of examines robberies reported to Lowell Police Department in 2010, between January 1st and December 31st of 2010. Analysis of these for the variables were used to discover trends and patterns of robbery occurring in Lowell. Massachusetts, Lowell, see, this is the thing about video. Lowell, Massachusetts, and what plans and procedures can be executed to reduce the amounts of robbery occurring in the city. I'm not doing a second take. The city has been divided into 3 sectors, each commanded by a captain. This captain has overall responsibility for the administration of police, personnel, neighborhood problems and concerns, as well as successes in the area. The sector captains coordinate their priorities and provision of services through the shift coordinator. Now, the population by race, white alone is about 66,000 whites in Lowell. The other majority of people are Cambodians in Lowell. They all in the north sector. Hit the first slide, please. Thank you. So my figure 1 here is a chart between armed and unarmed robberies through which type. About 51% of all robberies that were reported out of the 100 samples that I took, random samples, were armed robberies. Now, this one is also the frequency of the weapon type used, which coincides with the first graph I just showed you. About 39% of the each robbery was either by hands, by physical violence, like someone put their hands on you, or even threaten you to, beat you up or something and take your money. The gun was the next highest one. With actually, it was the lowest one. With the threat of a gun shown, it was 30% of the time. The other was just threatening or coercion with other people, which was 31% of the time. This is by sector. Now, each robbery, 35% of each one is the north, 35% is the east, and 30% is the west, which really doesn't make too much sense. It's all about the same. It's not all in one area. There's different, it goes by race, it goes by the people living there. There's no real distinctive between each sector. They're just separated because of policing procedures. Now, this graph shows us that there was a lot more cases in the hours of 1700 to 59 minutes, 59 minutes, hours, because it's the late time, it's dark. It could be, there's no witnesses, a lot of the arrests weren't made at this time, a lot of people can be more active at nighttime. They're not in school, they're not at work. But this one, there was 46% of all the cases were on the third shift, on the third platoon. Sex of the victims. There's 78% of all victims that were robbed in 2010 were males. You'd think most people would target females. No, it's males. Most males feel safe enough to walk home after night at 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, in following graphs, you'll see it's not so. You're by yourself in the dark time, something's going to happen. There's a high chance. weapon involved. We actually went through that, but it was hands was 39% of the time, gun 30, and other 31. This is just another chart, easier to read. Why it's in there. I also, to do the analysis, I did by seasons. I think it's easier than doing months because seasons change a lot more than months do. April and May could be the same, March and April could be the same, so I did all by seasons. 21% of all robberies happened in the winter time, which was between December and February. Springtime, March and May. Summertime, obvious, and fall, for unexpectedly, was the highest number with 30%. I can't come up with anything because kids are going back to school at that time. There's not many people out on the streets, but there was 30 robberies involved. This is by the day with, there's a correlation between the arrest and the day of the week. No arrests, any reports that were, did not have an outcome of arrest, it was either the charges were dropped or there was not enough evidence. But this goes by the day of the week. Obviously, it goes up, you know, as the week goes up, but for some reason there's no arrests on Mondays. I don't understand, you know, why it could be Mondays. It's just one of those irregular factors, irregular variables that just pops out of nowhere. But the high ones are all over here, especially with the arrests. Obviously there's a lot more activity on these days. That's why there's more arrests. Was the victim injured during robberies? 61% of it was no, because a lot of people don't want to be hurt. That's why they're more willing to give up their belongings, whatever the suspect is trying, the assailant is trying to rob from them. There was actually 2 cases that in the 100 random samples that there was nothing said. They didn't want to say if they were injured or not. They said that they were fine. They could have been, but they weren't. Now this is the frequency by each sector, which will tell us how many times in each sector by the time, by nighttime, where we should put more patrolling in Lowell. North sector, in those hours that we mentioned prior, for some reason people are out at that time of night. It is a lot busier district, a lot more populated. Those could be factors as well that will make this, you know, escalate and de-escalate. But the lowest between, you know, 9 o'clock in the morning and 5 o'clock in the afternoon, people are probably working. But in the west sector, it's very more industrial, a lot more business. Most people are working at that time. It's a lot more commercial. And that actually is the end, but I have my conclusion, which is right here. I didn't know that was the end. Alright. Other than Lynn, Worcester, Springfield, New Bedford, Fall River, and Boston, Lowell is one of the top crime rates in Massachusetts. Boston soars over all of them, according to the 2006 annual reports, with about 2,500, 2,468. Lowell only had 213 actually reported crimes, and Boston's obviously a lot bigger. But Lowell's averaging about 205 a year, and this year was no exception. There was 203 total. There are many possibilities of why, where, when robbery occurs, but this, I'm not trying to stop robbery because it cannot be stopped altogether. It can only be helped in preventing it. Yes, in a perfect world there would be no robbery, there would be no violence, but there still is greed, and we are far from that right now. This approach that I did is used to aid in identifying like the hot spots in Lowell, to maybe bump up patrolling in those areas to help with a better quality of overall life for Lowell, Massachusetts residents. It is anticipated that the number of arrests, relative to these offenses should go up in the new year. Hiring of new police officers will help Lowell. Averages and patterns stay the same, so policing procedures, policing communities, community policing should all stay the same also. The city was in no position to hire more officers just a little while ago, and it had narrowly avoided firing 32 of them. So with help from offices of the state and federal representatives, with the actual grant and federal funding, they were allowed to hire more, and this is why, with the population increasing, Lowell was able to hire more police officers to keep that crime rate not from increasing as well. More officers usually mean less crimes of this specific nature. That was my presentation on the first try.